This is what I know of Libya, but this is probably what you've always known. War, fire, foreign government interference, and dictatorship. But today I'm showing you a different side of this country. Today we're going back in time to Leptis Magna. Originally founded in the year 1000 BC by the Phoenicians, eventually the Romans conquered and built up Leptis into an incredible harbor, marketplace, residential district, and shops. Septimus Severus was born here and eventually became the emperor. It was only until the Arab conquest in 642 AD that Leptis fell. To this day, it remains one of the largest and most well-preserved archaeological sites in Libya and potentially one of the best Roman sites in the entire world. Upon walking into Leptis Magna, you see this magnificent structure in the center. This is the Septimus Severus Arch. Yes, it sounds kind of like Harry Potter. The carvings are incredibly intricate. And I find it interesting that although we call it Leptis Magna, this was actually a Punic word, meaning greater Leptis, distinguishing it from Lesser Leptis, which was closer to Carthage in modern-day Tunisia. But before this, there is such an immense history of this area and these structures, and we'll never uncover the Phoenician structures that existed once before, because the Romans came and put all of these incredible structures on top of those other structures. But we'll get to some of that later. For now, let's walk down this authentic original road. Put our minds back in the day when Roman emperors walked these streets. As we begin to walk into the city, we see the Hydranius Baths next to us. They're made from beautiful columns of marble, and you can imagine what this once was. Now I'm going to leave this map here so you can come back and refer to it. There should be a chapter that you can see and it will say Map of Leptis. So feel free to come back and refer to it as we go through. Next, I'll let our guide explain the Palestra.
So this is like a warming up spot or like a gym. The kind of sports that people used to have in the old days, like jogging, wrestling, fighting, gymnastics, these are the type of sports. Plus, if you can see, the Palestra is divided into 8 small fields. So you can have different games taking place at the same time. This is where the water supply would come from. And the Roman had built some dams and reservoirs so they can have water supply all year long.
Which then brings us to the Adrianus Baths. These baths were filled up naturally by rainwater. Even now during rainy season, the top can be completely filled. And again, this is only from rain. People would come here to bathe after working, or just simply in the afternoon. People would come here to chat, they'd talk business, they would talk about war. It was a very important place in this ancient city.
There used to be statues that line this entire pool, but they have all been taken to museums. Can you imagine how grand this would have been with the white mosaics in the bottom of this natural pool and all of these statues made out of marble around it? Just would have been incredible to see.
All of this marble has been restored, however, it is all original marble. So this is just the process of putting the pieces back together, which brings us to the latrines. I love this photo here because you can see how it once looked.
Behind me is the frigidarium. This would keep the water cold so that it would be a cold water bath. They also had thermal baths, so they had hot water and cold water, kind of like when you go to a spa and you go in the cold plunge.
This is actually the opposite of the frigidarium. So the frigidarium was a cold water pool, and this is more similar to a jacuzzi.
These are the warm jacuzzi-like structures.
And this is actually one of the more interesting things to me that they were able to do is actually heat up water from the ground, and they were able to create steam. Now I just want to show you a few more incredible shots of this area, but we need to walk over to the ovens essentially, and all of the pipes where they actually made the hot air and the steam and the heat, because this is really the most interesting and incredible part about all of this. As you can see, these are actually like huge ovens that they would use to heat up the water. I kind of love how all of the different bricks are different sizes because they were very obviously made by hand. They are made of terracotta clay. Do you see those pipes there and how they're almost a square shape? These pipes are 2,000 years old. My 100-year pipes can't even match up to this. Pretty incredible.
Now I am in the communal latrines. So 50 people could actually go to the bathroom here at one time, and they would chat and they would go to the toilet like this. I'm not sure how long they were taking in the bathroom. Seems like it was quite a while. But there was clean water that ran along here, and that was to actually clean the latrines using sponge. And then there was an open area over here to give it kind of some air, I guess you could say, since it probably smelled not the best. But can you imagine 50 people hanging out here going to the bathroom together? I can't. There were 250 columns lining this road, 125 on this side and 125 on this side. And we know that because of the base.
The Nymphaeum was almost like another square in the city. It had a monument consecrated to the nymphs, but was essentially just a place of gathering. Moving on, this is the Byzantine church. But not just a church, this is also where people would gather to listen to speeches and announcements. This is known to be one of the more grand structures. Plus, if you look closely, you can see doors, and all of these doors were for shops. So this was not only a place to speak and be heard, but also for shopping. So it was really the central part of the city. And although every part of the city did have an important purpose, this was definitely a very important area as well.
Woo! Woo! Hello!
You're going to have to use a bit of your imagination with this one, but this is the temple. And if you walk a little bit further, you can see above here that these are all Madusa heads that line these columns.
And it was essentially kind of like evil eye to ward it off.
This is the Severum Forum. At one point, there were over 70 sculptured Gorgon heads. Now, I say Gorgon or Gorgo, also known as guardian or protectress. They believed that because of the living snakes in her hair, or in place of her hair, she was considered so hideous that anyone who looked upon her was turned to stone. Madusa, Urael, and Snethno were known as the three Gorgon sisters, but only Madusa was actually immortal. This is the Basilica, and although I do have a computer simulation of what it once looked like, this is in pretty good condition. I am absolutely obsessed with all of the carvings in here. These are actually grape leaves, and the reason why we can't actually go into this area is because they are trying to protect these carvings because they are in such good condition. You can see here that this was a cross that came with the Romans. So this basilica was not originally with the Greeks, but it was with the Romans after they conquered. And you can also see the remnants of the Romans here with the Latin that they have inscribed. Okay, now let's actually talk about this. This is a legitimate mosaic that we found here on the ground. He actually ended up hiding this because he didn't want anyone to take it and potentially steal it. Yes, this is super illegal, but people still do it because, I mean, it is a piece of history, and although I think it's wrong to do so, it's definitely an incredible artifact. So up next is the Old Forum. A forum is essentially just a place that people would gather and they would speak, and to get to the Old Forum, we need to go through the Byzantine Gate. We actually have 3 temples in the Old Forum. One is Hercules' temple. Eventually, they ended up building a new forum, and so that became the center of attraction. They were always evolving in the ancient empire. One thing I think people don't talk about enough is who was here before the Phoenicians came here, before the Romans came here. Amazigh people are the indigenous people of these lands. Well, is the Phoenician language here, there's also
The local language, the Berber people who used to live here, the indigenous people.
Berber is a colonial term, but he is essentially saying Amazigh, and you can see that writing down there at the very bottom. I've also seen this writing when I was in Algeria, and it's still used in some communities there today. But to reiterate, so the Phoenicians were here first after conquering the Amazigh people, and the Romans built on top of them. So this is the Phoenicians' foundation and where the Romans built on top of their foundation. They are still finding remnants of Greek Phoenician society below the surface. And this is also true in the next place that we are going. Right now, if you can see, I am walking towards the sea. In the sea, they still find artifacts and different remnants of societies. Imagine going snorkeling and just happening to find an artifact.
The beautiful ocean.
All of a sudden, a family comes up to us. We had seen them earlier, and they are trying to give us some sweets. I can't say no to that, and it is extremely rude not to take something that you are offered here, so I thought this was very kind. Libyans are incredibly hospitable. Okay, let's switch gears here because this is something a little bit funny. Do you see what this is? This is a male part, I guess you could say, and it's pointing in the direction of the Haram. Now, the Haram is where they would fornicate altogether. Most people know this, but ancient Greek and Roman sites had a lot of openness in terms of their sexuality. Now, we were just at the Haram, and we were heading over to an area that actually housed all of the shops. Shops were obviously a very important part of society back then. Look at these carvings, incredible. And I think that they were so much more advanced than we actually give them credit for, and maybe I say that over and over. They actually had this device where they measured items so that they would give the exact right amount for the exact right price. Let me show you.
This was a measurement device, so they would put a bag underneath and then things would go in and they would measure it by volume. So there were different amounts and that was how much you were getting. And these are stamps from the government to say that they were official and this was an official place of business. Crazy.
Now, I know you've been waiting for this because this is the best part of any ancient Roman city. The amphitheater. This one was primarily for drama and music, performances. Look at how beautiful all of that marble is. This amphitheater was actually originally excavated in a natural depression or a former quarry. 16,000 people could be accommodated in the stands of this amphitheater. There is actually an inscription here that informs everyone who comes here. The amphitheater was inaugurated by the governor Marcus Pompeius Silvanus Stabarius Flavinus of Africa. It was his third year in office, and Quintus Caesius Gratuus is his deputy. They dedicated the monument to the young Emperor Nero, finishing this in the year 56.
It travels very fast. So this is the water wheel. You can see the sound here. Yeah, so the orchestra will sit here, and these people be closer to the audience here. So they will have a cushion to sit and be closer to the actors.
I'm hoping that made sense, but there was basically a hole on the ground where they could speak into or clap or perform, and then people could hear it in the back of the amphitheater because it would amplify their voices. It's really just incredible they had the technology. I know I keep saying it. Let's now walk up so we can see a little bit more from above. What a magnificent sight. Now, we're not quite done. First, we need to grab some lunch because we actually need to drive to the Circus, as it's called, or Hippodrome. First, we were picking our fish that was obviously caught very freshly from the ocean next to here. This was one of the best meals that I had in Libya, actually. Look at that. It is so fresh, and that rice was so yummy with such a great salad. I'm telling you, I always have my best meals when just on the side of a road.
This was so good.
Now we are finally at the Hippodrome or the Circus. Some people believe that it must have been used for chariot races, but this could fit 20,000 to 25,000 people. This is actually a mosaic from that time, but it's just a magnificent structure, and although it is not as repaired as some of the other parts of Leptis Magna, I actually liked this the best. I love to see things in their original state and a bit less restored. Well, thanks for spending time with me at Leptis Magna. Let me know any of your comments down below, and I really hope I get to return to Libya soon. Like, share, and follow.